Okay. No 2-minute warning tonight. 10-second, oh, we're live. It's 5:30. Let's call the regular council meeting of May 23rd to order. As per usual. Before, I always forget this, but before I forget tonight, Deputy Mayor Reid is away on vacation, won't be joining us. First thing on the agenda is always the adoption of the agenda. And I understand we need to add a third in-camera item, 11C. If someone could make that motion. Councillor McFadden?
I'll move the agenda as amended.
Okay, all those in favor? Carries, thank you. Minutes of our previous meeting. Councillor McFadden for the win.
Yeah, I'll move the adoption of the minutes.
All those in favor of the minutes? And that carries as well, thank you. We do not have any delegations tonight. We do have 2 bylaws. Councillor Nagel, you had your lights on for that reason?
Yeah, I will excuse myself from these agenda items. I was away from the meeting where these the public hearings happened, and so I can't vote on these. So I will be hiding in the back.
All right, thank you. We'll come and get you for the business portion of our agenda. Councillor Nagel has left the building. Mr. Corman, you seem to be ready for a bylaw 1223 304 First Street East.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Mayor and Council. This is a second and third reading of the bylaw. I'll just refresh your memory that the parcel in question is on Ross Avenue and First Street East. It is excuse me. The applicant is extending the use of the building. Parking is to be finalized at the development permit stage, but they believe that all the parking can be on the existing parcel, and no street parking would be required or no variance would be required for that. Here's a look at the front yard. As you can see, the building to the left and the garage will be used for parking, as well as in the back. There's ample area for that. They are leaving the building as is, as we know now, and based on conversations, it will be used as medical offices. So we are moving from a RMX, or residential mixed district, to a commercial transition district that has these permitted uses. And a notice of the application was posted on site. It went to CPC for comments on April 19th, and CPC was in favor of the application. There was one letter of concern. The public hearing was on May 8th, and the applicant spoke on behalf of the application. I believe you have all of that in your package. So the recommended action tonight is to give council, the council gives second and third reading to bylaw 1223. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Wilson, do you want to move second reading? And
yep, I was just weighing in to move second reading. That yes, I guess motion second reading, and to say that it's exciting to see our RMX transitioning to commercial transition as we have a overall strategic plan for the East End neighborhood, and it's nice to see that happening while keeping some of our historic charm and character of the building structure too.
Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, sorry, I just have one question on this. As I recall from the public hearing and the communications piece, the letter in opposition we got, the concern was primarily parking.
That is correct, and it was noted by the applicant that all of the parking would be on site, and that they can accommodate enough parking for staff as well as their guests, given the space that they're using for the medical application.
On site, okay. Yeah, and with that being addressed then, yeah, I certainly support this. As highlighted, I really like that we're able to kind of blend some of our historic buildings with modern uses, and it really keeps the character of that, so it's nice to see these innovative approaches to that. And with that being said, this has my support.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Padeco?
Thank you. Same here as well. I know the property, and because we can accommodate so many people on site, and we know that it's probably, hopefully, not going to cause any sort of issues of residential parking where it shouldn't be, or parking where it shouldn't be in the residential area. I'm happy to support it, and glad to see some diversity come to the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. I just have one question, Mr. Corman, and it's somewhat not related to the land use, but the historic designation. Well, this building is not a Class 1 or a Class A. I forget which one of those. Maybe you can help me out. But then, how is the historicness of this site maintained? Preserved,
I would have to get back to you on that, Mr. Mayor. I believe it's classified in our registry as a certain type and that it has some significance, but we would encourage any development to keep the existing, but they have full right to
Yeah.
demolish.
I guess my question is, the land use isn't tied to the historic site. So
That's correct.
regardless of what we change the zoning to.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Hyman?
Yeah, I just had to help Mr. Corman. I don't have the exact definition, but it is not the primary register, it's a secondary. The applicants, as they shared in the public hearing, their intent was to put medical offices within the site, keep the character of the building. So I think all of those things will be addressed, but it's not tied to the land use in this situation.
Thank you. Yeah, that was the point I was trying to make, or at least question was, irregardless of how we zone the land, the historic
Designation.
thank you, stays. Okay. All right. I don't see any other questions. I'll call the question on second reading. All those in favor? It carries. Councillor Wilson, you want to carry on with third reading?
Absolutely. I'll move third reading, the council give third reading to Bylaw 12, 2023.
All right. All those in favor of third reading? And that carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Corman. 5B, I believe you're on stage for as well.
I will. Yes, Bylaw 13, 2023, land use amendment for 313 Ross Avenue. This is a parcel on Ross Avenue just above, or just beside the park and the skating rink beside 1A highway. Here is the dimensions of the lot itself. No exterior renovations are proposed, and they are proposing that the parking will be located off the back lane on the site of the property, thus not needing any variance in parking for street parking. Here is a look from the west view and where the alleyway entrance is on the north view. And then this is the back area where they will manipulate the area to allow for parking on site. They are moving, once again, as the other property, from RMX to RCT, and those are the permitted uses. The notice of application sign was posted on February 2023. It was circulated for comments. It did go to CPC on April 19th and was in full support of the CPC, and they felt it was a good transition for the area with proper controls in place. During the public hearing on May 8th, the applicant spoke in favor of the application and discussed their plans for the property. And so, again, the action is to give second and third reading to Bylaw 13, 2023, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Corman. Look for a motion for second reading. Councillor McFadden, quick on the button tonight.
Councillor Wilson was giving me the look. So I'll move second reading of Bylaw 13, 2023.
No comments, questions, concerns?
Nope, I like this one. And all of the parking concerns, which are usually the standard concerns in this area, have already been addressed, so it fits with what we're trying to accomplish.
All right, thank you. No other lights, all right. Okay, I will call the question. All those in favor of second reading? Carried. Would you like to carry on with third reading and save me the awkward silence?
Certainly. I'll move that council give third reading to Bylaw 13, 2023.
And all those in favor of third reading? Carried.
Thank you,
Mr.
council.
Corman. Ms. Knight, you're getting Councillor Nagel. Thank you, thank you. We'll move into our business section of the agenda. 6A is Vantage Land Corp. Property Tax Adjustment. Mr. Lee.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Tonight I'm presenting two reports, 6A and 6B. These two reports have been presented to council in the past. It's always presented after the tax rate bylaw has been approved. So the first one is for Vantage Land Corporation property tax adjustment. And the recommended action is council approves reducing the 2023 CRL property taxes for Vantage Land Corporation by $71,545.56. Just for council's information, last year the 2022's number was $74,619.83. Just a bit of a background, council had signed an MOU with Vantage Land in 2010, and it is to encourage the developer to proceed with the remediation and development of 44.5 acres at Griffin Road. This particular property, the quarry site, is made up of 11 sites. Right now, there's only one that continues to be undeveloped, and that equals 2.25 acres, which is subject to the tax reduction. That's my presentation, Your Worship.
Thank you for your presentation. Councillor Flowers.
I will make the recommended option. Number one, the council approves reducing the 2023 Community Revitalization Levy property taxes for Vantage Land Corporation by $71,545.56.
Okay, no comments? All right. As you've indicated, we've been through this before. Just one thing I would highlight, I guess, is that and it was in the package that once development permits are issued for that 2.25 acres, there would be no need for this to be reduced in the future, but just fall into the current taxation zone, just like everything else.
That is correct, Your Worship.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. You've got another similar item, 6B?
Yes, Your Worship. 6B. The recommended action is that council approves reducing the 2023 property taxes for Mr. Robinson by $25,081.77. And again, for council's information, last year for 2022, the number was $26,493.47. Bit of background, the town of Cochrane and Mr. Robinson entered an agreement for a period of 6 years, commencing in 2018. And the agreement allows Mr. Robinson to relocate the gravel mining so the town can undertake the construction of the James Walker Trail. Under the agreement, his property would be taxed at the 2018 level. So tonight, we're just seeking approval of the $25,081.77.
Okay, need a motion, please. Councillor Wilson, thank you.
I have no comment other than I'll move the recommended action.
Okay, no questions. Councillor Fadek.
I have one quick question. So this obviously expires next year in 2024. For anybody interested, I'm sure it's not that we have to wait that long for obviously the James Walker Trail to start plans for development, just so that people aren't thinking that we're waiting until next year before we kind of get a head start.
Your Worship, to Councillor Federico, you are correct. The last year is 2024. This agreement pertains to.
Okay. All right. Call the question. All those in favor? And that carries.
Thank you, Your Worship, Council.
No finance this evening. We do have a notice of motion carried over from last meeting. Councillor Nagel.
Yeah, sorry about that. I hope to move this the last council meeting, but I had a bit of a family emergency pop up. I had to cancel at the last minute, but I will move my motion now and then discuss it. I move the council direct administration to prepare a report to council on a potential bylaw amendment that would allow cyclists to use sidewalks, provided there are no bike lanes available, and that the cyclists have proper bells installed, and that this report would be presented to council by the end of June. And we'll be debating this and voting on it now, correct, Chair, Mr. Chair?
Yes, to direct administration to bring this back.
Right.
Is this something we want to direct our administration to work on? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so this idea is actually a idea that came up in a conversation between myself and Paul from Bike Cochrane. And it's pretty simple. It's just that there are certain strips in Cochrane that are just really quite not safe if you're trying to bike on the road, particularly anywhere downtown where there's no bike lanes and it's on-street parking. And of course, crossing the old bridge as well, you'd have to be insane to try and pass that on, go on that on a bike instead of the sidewalk. And this would just kind of make it safer for cyclists. And if I'm understanding administration's recent advice correctly, this, if we were to go forward with it, would help us apply for a grant. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Nagel, the Active Transportation Fund grant was applied for last year in 2022. The report came to council in March to support and endorse that application. One of the grants that we applied for was a $50,000 planning grant, which allows us to look at our micromobility and traffic restrictions and parameters. That grant has been included in your 2023 budget, and as we understand, it has been approved, so we will be proceeding with that project this year. What administration would suggest at this time, though obviously we will review if council directs us to do so, is that this type of allowance and or consideration would be part of the review and consideration in any updated micromobility traffic control parameters. So it may potentially be premature given that the implications of that type of use and or those changes would be considered within that bylaw.
Sorry, can you simplify that?
So part of what the grant is intended to do is to address our micromobility within our community, how people are using our paths, trails, and roadways, whether that be with vehicles, cycles, e-scooters, e-bikes. So what the restrictions are, what the parameters for use are, how we're going to continue to develop those in a way that reduces potential conflict, and any regulations with respect to the users of those would be considered within that bylaw that would be developed specifically to micromobility within our community. So what I would suggest is that this type of consideration would be something that would be reviewed as part of that process in consideration of the bigger picture and other potential implications.
When's that report expected to come back to council?
So that project was funded for 2023. We have not RFP'd as of yet, but the intention would be that those regulations and any recommendations would come back to council probably by Q4 is the anticipated turnaround time.
Okay, well, my motion still stands. I'm interested in hearing what everybody else thinks.
Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of paraphrase what I'm hearing is your motion would be the ultimate goal would be to implement this for this summer. And what administration is saying is that we've received a grant that allows us to look into multimodal processes, but just that administrative process itself, even if this was supported, wouldn't really lead to an impact or change of allowance until next year. So if that's correct, then the decision is whether we would like to try this. I would almost think of it as a pilot project for this year, and maybe that supports the work into the grant, or to wait and see the results of the grant study. For my mind, as a parent that sends their kids off on bikes sometimes, I'll actually tell them to use the sidewalks because it's, safer for them. I mean, I understand actually kids under 12 can ride on the sidewalks anyhow, but I would certainly support implementing your recommended action with that report to come back by the end of June, as I'd like to see this, trialed this year.
Councillor Flowers?
Yes, I think bike safety is really important, and it's also important for those walking on the sidewalk to be safe. So it sounds like a duplication to me. I'd rather it was part of the whole package and be looked at and be ready to go for next year. It's just to make sure we're not piecemealing it and missing something. So I would be against it at this time.
Councillor Federico?
I was just going to ask Councillor Nagel, is there a particular area that perhaps we could kind of deal with both areas? Kind of like what Councillor McFadden's saying, kind of do a jump start of a particular strip, but really not kind of implement maybe the whole picture right now until we deal with the grant?
Yeah, I thought about looking at specific streets. The trouble, I think, is just it becomes too complicated. Like the old bridge is a really great example, probably up and down Griffin. If it's in the evening, you need to be on the road as opposed to down the parks. Another great example because cars rip up and down there at nighttime. Railway is another great example. But if you're doing it road by road, I think it's just too complicated for users as well as bylaw and the community to understand. So I thought just say if there's no bike lanes present, you can go on the sidewalk. But if you're on the sidewalk, you have to have a bell or something. I don't think, yeah, this seems to me like a really no-brainer thing, especially since the community is doing this. Like if you watch people during the summer, I guarantee you they're on the sidewalk. This just makes it, makes people know that it's allowed. If you're gonna do it, please have a bell.
I guess a question to administration, does this have any sort of financial implication if we just jumpstart it right now and then deal with the rest of the study as it goes on?
Through the chair to Councillor Federico, while I would suggest that there wouldn't be any specific financial implications, the potential for the expectation of the community to enforce whether or not somebody has a bell on their bicycle when they're on the sidewalk could be something, but we don't receive complaints in this area now when people are using the sidewalk where it's unsafe, nor do we enforce.
Yeah, Councillor Nagel, you have my support to be able to proceed with this. I think if it's not harming anything, it's not like we have a ton of complaints to be able to deal with this. If we do, I guess, God forbid, poor bylaw or municipal enforcement officers that will have to deal with it. But really, I think it's part of a bigger picture that's coming. And rather than waiting a year to then implement it, just seems like a waste of time.
Councillor Wilson?
Just for clarity from administration, did I hear that it's recommended that we don't go ahead with this simply because if we wait 1 year, we get the same and a better intended outcome, so it's doing the same thing twice? Did I understand that right?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilson, the recommendation from administration would be to wait for the bigger project just so that any implications could be considered. As most of us have experienced, once you pilot something, the expectation is that that's going to continue. So there is the possibility that there could be conflicts in the future if it's determined that it's not appropriate. But it's up to council at this point to direct administration.
Thank you. I see the wisdom in that, and in a rare case, I think I see council or administration's wisdom over my fellow councillor Nagel on this one. I don't think I'm for this action.
Okay, I'll weigh in with my thoughts at this point, and then maybe we can go around again or give you an opportunity to close. Councillor Nagel, I would like to see you amend your motion to have this included in the study that is going on with the active transportation grant that Ms. Lowe has highlighted tonight. While I agree with your outcome and your intentions of the motion, and I think that the outcomes will likely be what you would like them to be, I just see so many impacts that we wouldn't have a chance to really get a grasp on in the short timeline in which you'd like to turn this around. One, we've heard from enforcement. What about parking in some of these areas? Well, there's just a whole lot of different interactions between cyclists and pedestrians, and then where this happens, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's ripple effects and impacts that would likely be created by this if we were to kind of do it this year, this quickly. But I do see, you know, a real opportunity and a need for it if we were to add it as part of the ATF. I think that's an ATF fund, the Active Transportation Fund grant, and then the process that would be unfolding this fall. I know it's a year or next spring at this time. I think we'd have a better understanding of how this would unfold, where it would be, and then all of the costs associated with the impacts of it. So if you're willing to add it to the grant process, I would support that. In the way it's presented tonight, I cannot. Councillor McFadden?
Just taking a slightly different time. The recommended action is the potential bylaw amendment would be brought to us for the end of June. So then the decision to proceed would happen, you know, at that meeting as opposed to this meeting. And so I'd like to do it because I also think this is a great opportunity to kind of hear from the users. Like if this is resonating with our users, it would give them a chance to kind of provide some feedback and we could establish whether it is or not, or, you know, if it's not causing any ripples, maybe it's not needed. But I certainly support, you know, the recommended action, and I don't really see how this is more validating existing use than creating any challenges that we have already or adding to new challenges. The only piece is kind of the proper bells installed, but we require people, I think we require cyclists to have bells already, and that's a hit and miss process as it is. But anyway, I continue to support the recommended action and to see what the potential bylaw could be for the end of June.
Okay, Councillor Nagel, bringing it home?
Well, unless any of the no votes have had a change of heart, sounds like this thing is gonna die on the floor if we don't amend it. But I would just like to, I guess, double down on what Councillor McFadden said, that this is really, it's making something that's already happened a little bit safer, or something that's already happening a little bit safer, because people are already on the sidewalk. And this just was send the message to people, if you're gonna be on the sidewalk, then you have to have a bell to be there. But to my knowledge, there's no other bell bylaw in Cochrane requiring that. So it's my last ditch effort, but doesn't seem like anybody's gonna change their mind. So let's change my motion, I suppose. So how would I change the word in here? First off, Mr. Chair, I withdraw my motion, and I would like to move that council direct administrative reporting.
But it might just be.
Yes. Sure. I would like to move the exact same motion, but it should read by the end of June 2024. Does that work? Is that an elegant way of doing that?
Or could it just simply say be added to the
Sure.
process? But then it doesn't have it, because it could come back quicker that way.
Sure.
Is all I'm, whatever, what's the process again called? Sorry, Ms. Lowe?
So the micromobility study and bylaw, which should be presented to council by Q4 of 2023. I think it could go either way. Either the motion could be amended to be included in that project specifically, and or that a recommendation be brought to council no later than June 2024, which is I think what I heard Councillor Nagel suggest.
I like that wording, but it's your motion, Councillor Nagel. Added to and or June 24th.
Yeah, that sounds like a friendly amendment.
We're way overthinking this.
So everything that's on the recommended action except would be included in the micro mobility study through the Active Transportation Fund grant and or by June 24.
And I intend to continue riding illegally across the bridge on the sidewalk this summer.
I'm just gonna come arrest you.
Yeah, okay, I'm done.
Sorry, you broke up at the end there. Okay, everybody understands the new motion? Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of the notice of motion? That carries unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Nagel. Mayor's report. I have a brief one. Spent time with mid-sized cities. We are really, the conversation of late has been election, provincial election. So we're really focusing on a post-election strategy to get in front of the new government, whichever government forms government on May 29th, and which is a segue into what Cochrane needs. I think maybe everybody saw the post from our administration on the, wherever it was, I don't know. Well, it was at the trade show. We had the one pager on what Cochrane's looking for in the provincial election. So just a shout out that if to keep sharing that with your networks. Was happy to work the drive-through window with a couple of colleagues, and I'm going to try and keep my day job, I think was the outcome of that, but great to see the support in the community for all of the good things that McDonald's is doing with McHappy Day. CMRB, we had a workshop around, and this is another one of the priorities that CMRB has identified. One, as I've reported on, is economic development. This one is on transportation, doing a transportation master plan for the region. So this is further to that work. So we had a workshop on that 10 days ago or so. It was just the first one. So more to share on that in the future. Councillor Federico and I were at the tree plant with Branches and Banks, and Trees Bring Joy. It's the group, I call them, from Ranchview, Mr. Belzy, who is retiring this June after 40 years of teaching in Cochrane. Well, teaching, I'm not sure they were all in Cochrane. So shout out to a fine teacher in our community who's moving on to another phase of life, and Branches and Banks and Mr. Geese for planting what they figured was their 50,000th tree. Well, that's the number, right? 50,000th tree in Cochrane since they started Branches and Banks 25 years ago. So the volunteer groups in Cochrane are alive and well, and it's good to see that location receive, I think, close to 700 plants down there. I'll let you finish in your report how many trees you planted. I planted just the one. SETI continues to move forward. The one thing I would note from SETI, there were a lot of the, well, all of the elected officials were missing from our last meeting last week, but it was due to an overwhelming number of deaths on the reserve. And one of the things that really jumped out at myself, Councillor Flowers, in one of the, as we embark on this journey together and learn about one another, something that became quite present for me was the fact that their cultural difference in how close-knit they are as a group. The whole population is a family, so to speak, and when there's a death in the family, things shut down, stop, they pause, and they have a real ceremony, I guess, for lack of a better word. I'm struggling with words, trying to capture things on a culture that I'm still learning about. But the fact that there was just something about that, I guess, is why I'm compelled to share it with council tonight, is just that as we're trying to work a timeline that is imposed on, well, from us, and working with two different cultures, the interface there is different. And this is just one of the ways that it's presented itself. So condolences to the chiefs and councils and all the people in Stoney Nakoda for what they're going through and grieving on Stoney Nakoda lands. So citizenship ceremony, speaking of Mr. Belzy, his grade 6 class at Ranchview hosted a Canadian citizenship ceremony, and I would recommend that to all Canadians, if you have not witnessed one or partaken in one, you should go and witness that. It was quite emotional and moving to see 40 new Canadians sworn in Cochrane. The grade 6 class did a wonderful job hosting and decorating and singing and all of the things to make those individuals feel welcome in their new country. But then just the emotion and it just put everything in perspective. Some of the issues that we find to be so grand they just pale in comparison to some of the issues that those people are leaving behind and to join our country. So one woman said to me, and I was kind of in the middle of it all and got to hand them a Canadian flag, and the one, I said, "Oh, congratulations, that's a nice welcome to Canada," and she says 12 years she's waited to get here. There was a gentleman who was here by himself, and from, I think, 15 different nations there were people joining Canada from. So I highly recommend witnessing that, or even maybe trying to take the oath or the test that all the grade 6s had to take as part of their class. So interesting. And again, shout out to Mr. Belzy. I think that's such a great way to learn about government and social studies. And then Saturday, I think it was Saturday night, the United Filipino Entrepreneur Association, UFEA, as they like to call it, And I'll maybe leave that one for one of my colleagues who, Councillor McFadden and Federico were both in attendance with me, so please. And that's my report. Councillor McFadden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, you know what, it's great. It finally feels that we're kind of on the other side of the COVID experience. More of my council work is going back to that, celebrating the community, coffee meetings, different community events. So it's nice to get back to connecting with everyone again. And so, yeah, McHappy Days. Yeah, the mayor and I should not work the drive-through window. I think we actually slowed up their business.
I was fine.
Uh-huh. That's fine.
McFlurry, and I would just be like,
I was doing all the work. Anyway, it was a really great experience, and it was a good reminder of, you know, I remember being a kid and having those first jobs and how hard you worked, and it was a good reminder for how hard, you know, you do work in those retail front-end jobs, and appreciate everybody that does that. And then secondly, yes, the UFEA, the United Filipino Entrepreneur Association. It was great to get invited to their induction ceremony, and one of the learnings for me was the Filipino community in Cochrane actually have 10 active businesses in our community, and they do a great job of supporting each other, providing jobs to our community, and just, you know, being a community, part of our community, and building and improving that. So it was a great event as well. And then for the rest of the long weekend, I did what many people did and just relaxed.
all right, thank you. Councillor Federico.
I feel like I'm repeating all the events, but yes, I did collect money at McHappy Days, and I blamed it all on you too. Why people's orders were slow. I did plant more trees than you. I at least planted 3. And yeah, UFEA was great. It was great to be invited and see an all board of women as of now, successful business female entrepreneurs out there driving their businesses forward. So it's exciting to see obviously what our Filipino community will do, and to get some of those other businesses. There's a lot more than just 10, but a lot of them are operating out of their house. So I'm sure we'll be excited to see them eventually take on storefronts as the future goes on. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Councillor Flowers.
Okay, as a member of the Seniors Advisory Committee, I want to let everybody know that Seniors Week is June 5th to 11th. It'll be the 37th year that the provincial government has celebrated Seniors Week. And the purpose is to honor and recognize seniors for the work that they have done and the contributions they've done in the province. So in Cochrane, there's going to be lots of activities going on, and many of them you need tickets for because there's a maximum number of people that can attend, but it's exciting to see everything getting back to normal. Some of the highlights are there's going to be educational opportunities, live entertainment, food, prizes, health and well-being sessions. The Colt transportation will be free to those over 60. All seniors on the Bow drop-in programs are free for the week, and Spray Lake's Sawmill Center morning classes are free for the week for those 60 plus. Age-friendly surveys will be launched during Seniors Week, the age-friendly program that we sponsored this year. So asking everyone to fill out surveys and get them in so they have lots of information. There's also a chance to win a $10 gift certificate. So I won't go through all the events that are happening, but watch for them.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Flowers, for the reminder. I think I signed a declaration today. I know I did. There's 2 nods over there. Yes, you did. Thank you. No other reports? Okay. Lost my agenda. Here we are. That concludes mayor's and council reports. We just have an in-camera session left. We need a motion to go in camera. Councillor Wilson, all those in favor? That carries. Thank you. We'll take a 5-minute break. Let's go 6. So 6:15.